Welcome to the Author Your Life podcast, where you can write a new script for your life and become the hero of your story. I'm your host, David McRae. You are the author of your life. Let's get started.
All you have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to you.
In my experience, there's no such thing as luck.
It is not our abilities that show what we truly are. It is our choices.
Hello, story changers, and welcome back to another episode of the Isolation Inspiration Interview Series. Today we have the incredible story of Michelle Foulia. This story is incredible, and because of this, I do actually have to issue some trigger warnings in respect to some of the content that comes up in today's interview. We are going to be discussing sexual abuse. We are going to be discussing miscarriage and stillbirth. So if any of this is content that you feel might be upsetting or triggering to you, I just want to make you aware of that and warn you before we go into this. Nonetheless, I would still highly encourage everyone to listen to this episode because this is an incredible story that Michelle has, and I'm sure you'll see this as I start to outline some of her bio to prepare you for who she is as a person. So Michelle was born in Cyprus 2 months after the start of the 1974 war between Turkey and Cyprus. Perhaps it was a sign of things to come as life moved at a similarly frantic pace packed with repeated trauma. At 5, her father was killed in a sea accident. Several months later, her mother took her own life, Michelle being the one to find her body. The next few years saw her in and out of foster care, living on her grandparents' farm, being a young carer for her frail grandmother, and enduring sexual abuse. By 14, she lost her paternal grandparents and maternal grandfather and step-grandfather. Throughout her life, she continued to experience many more traumatic events. This included divorce, 5 miscarriages, stillbirth, and emigrating abroad twice. Today, Michelle resides in North Wales and is married to her Cypriot husband, Andreas. They have 3 living children who are home educated, while Michelle works as a coach and writer, as well as working on her memoir, The Story of Going from Victim to Victor. She has completed a children's book and a children's journal in which she has weaved the lessons and tools from her own experience of overcoming trauma. She is studying to be a counselor and psychotherapist and continues to work as a coach, helping and inspiring others on their journeys of victory. Her vision is to publish books that make a difference in our world through relevant projects connected to the book's topics. She's also in the process of setting up a non-profit to pioneer specific initiatives close to her heart. In this interview, you will learn, don't ask why things happen, because the answer doesn't always help you. That no one is born bad. There's no such thing as bad luck. And letting go of your expectations of others will help you to avoid tension during the coronavirus period. This really was a remarkable story, and it was one of those interviews that I find sometimes here on the podcast where I'm just sitting back and I feel very much like a spectator in a cinema of a grand theatrical film. And Michelle has an incredible story and she tells it really well, and I think for that reason you're going to get so much from this interview with Michelle Foulia. Michelle, welcome to the Author Your Life podcast.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Michelle, I'd like to kick things off by giving you the opportunity to share your story with us today. Would you like to give an account? And I know from the synopsis that I've heard that this is a pretty wild account. So my seatbelt is fastened and I'm ready to hear all about it.
Okay, yeah, all right. Well, this is quite, yeah, okay. Well, it's really hard to know what to share about my story because there's no one single event that I can say that was that event in my life that turned the course of my path, or it's been one big long series of events. And I'll tell you what they are, but I just always feel a little bit like I'm kind of regurgitating facts, which can be hard because that's not really what I'm intending. But I think people listening to this will understand. But my story did start when I was born, obviously. But I was born in Cyprus. My mom was English, but my father was Greek. And at the time of my birth, we lived in Cyprus, but my father was a captain in the Merchant Navy. And so he traveled a lot. In the first couple of years of my life, I traveled with him and my mom all over the world on the ship. But then when I was about, I think, 4 or 5, my parents decided that they were going to settle fully. Sorry, my accent, I hope I pronounced things properly, in Cyprus. And, I was getting older, they needed to be more settled. So my father decided to quit the Merchant Navy. And I was 5 years old. And on his last journey, this was his last journey ever, there was a horrendous accident and he was killed. It was a shipping accident. He was in China. And there was never a body. He just disappeared. Some people were found drowned. Some people were rescued. And him and 6 others, I think, just disappeared completely. And then my mother, who had already been struggling with mental illness or just, depression or different things like that, had just gone downhill. So over the course of the next few months, she attempted suicide 3 times. And the 3rd time she was successful. Again, I was still 5 years old. And the only memory I have of my parents, I don't have any memory of my father. And the only memory I have of my mother is when I found her, because in her 3rd attempt, she had locked the house, put me down for a nap, took an overdose. And then I woke up from my nap and went to wake her up, and obviously couldn't wake her up. So then began a whole kind of, I don't even know what the word is, series of like foster care placements and fights between grandparents who was going to get custody of me, and all kinds of things were going on. But and so I don't want to kind of, it's like I don't want to spend too long going through detail, but I'll just kind of try and bullet point it. I did live with my Greek grandparents for quite some time. I lived in foster care too. And when I was 9 years old, I lost my English grandfather. Again, this is really bizarre, right? Because the agreement was that I was going to live with my Greek grandparents on a little farm in Cyprus all year round. And every summer I would visit my English grandparents, who at the time lived in Spain. So I would do this. I would live all year round in this really poor, poverty doesn't even describe the farm. We had no running water. We had no electricity. Literally, I was just this kid that was really neglected. They loved me dearly, but they were very old, very sick, and they were really grieving. My dad was their only child. And my grandmother had several strokes. So I was actually their carer and trying to help them on the farm and trying to do life and school and all those things. And then I would go to Spain in the summer, and I would be in this enormous villa with lemon trees and, people, diplomats coming in and out to see my grandparents. It was crazy. It was such extremes. And then I'd come back again to that life on the farm and live the rest of the year. But when I was 9, I arrived in Spain. On the day I arrived in Spain, my English grandfather had died of a heart attack, and I was swiftly sent back to Cyprus again. Then by the time I was 11, we had lost the farm to the bank because it was mortgaged. So we lost our home, we became homeless. And me and my grandparents and our very few belongings shifted off into the village. And within a year, my grandfather had died in my arms. It broke him. Losing the farm, losing our home was the breaking point for him. And I knew I knew he was going to die. I had this knowing that I couldn't explain. And anyway, so he passed away when I was 11. And I was then sent off to the UK to live with my British grandmother, who had moved back from Spain. And so then I lived with her for a few years till I was 16. In that time, my great grandma had died, and it was a really traumatic time because my English grandma wouldn't let me go back to say goodbye, even though I knew she was dying. There was all this like war going on between the two kind of sides of my family, and I was always in the middle of it. And so, oops, I'm sorry about that. My arms, it's this Greek way of talking. I talk with my arms. And so, yeah, sorry. So I found myself, by kind of 12 years old in the UK, living with my English grandmother. And then I had a few years of living with her, which were really challenging. I had to learn the language. I had to get into school. I had to overcome a lot of things on my own, and I had to learn how to survive. And she was quite abusive. She was a drinker. She was alcoholic, and she would get really angry and just very abusive emotionally, mentally, psychologically, sometimes physically when we'd get into physical fights, but mostly it was the emotional stuff and the psychological abuse and insults and things that went on. So that was a really difficult time. My teenage years were incredibly difficult. There's a lot more to it, David. I mean, we would need hours to cover it, so I'm literally not even going into any detail. One of the things that happened when I moved in with her and I was through my teens was that she told me that the grandfather that died in Spain was not my biological grandfather. Apparently she'd been married before. I didn't even know there was a biological grandfather in existence. And she said, oh, your step-grandfather was very jealous of him, so wouldn't allow contact. But now he's gone. Would you like to meet your biological grandfather, your mother's father? I was like, of course, someone's alive, definitely. And so I met him, and we connected really well. He was a writer and a pianist and an artist, and then we just really connected and became very close. And he died a few months later of lung cancer. So you just felt that I felt I was killing people off, actually. That's how I felt. Like, if I get really close, if I love somebody, I'm going to kill them off. Like, I believed I carried something. And so I started becoming more distant and just turning into myself to keep people safe. That was like my way. And anyway, but also what had happened in my childhood, which nobody knew about, is I was sexually molested through all the time I lived on the farm by a family friend. And I never told anybody. It was a secret. I knew it would. Not only did he threaten me to not tell, but he didn't need to threaten me because I knew that it would be the finishing of my grandparents anyway. So I wouldn't have told, and I didn't tell. But I carried this also with me, throughout the time. And so I was dealing with a lot of things and a lot of trauma. And then I fell in love at 15, 16 with somebody 19 years older than me. And he was kind of my, what do you call it? My knight in shining armor, they say, like he was a rescuer. He like didn't. And by the time I had met him, I was definitely suicidal. I was definitely not coping with the situation in my grandmother's home. I had become very nervous of noise, of people, because she was so abusive, and she was really like, she would say I breathed too loud and it would disturb her, or I was really clumsy, or and it was like just constant. And so I became really nervous about touching things, about, people. And then when I met this guy, it was like this solution. I felt like he was going to rescue me out of this situation. And I walked out of my grandmother's house when I was 16 with what I had on, the same clothes I was wearing. I took nothing with me. I walked out and never went back again. And I ended up moving in with this guy. I kind of don't know if I should mention his name, really. I don't think it's relevant right now anyway. And so I moved in with him, and we lived together for a few years. We ended up getting married and divorced. And it was a very surreal lifestyle because he was in the guards, in the Queen's Guards, and in the band. And I was kind of very in love with the whole kind of uniform and the whole prestige thing. And it was such a good thing to take my mind off it. But actually, very quickly on, I realized that I'd married somebody who wasn't going to be the solution to my problems. I was very deep in trauma, and he wasn't in any place to help me. And we were together for a few years, and I think by 21 or 22 years old, I walked out. I left everything, and I just walked out, just looking to find myself. I mean, when I look back now, I realize that I was just always looking to find myself. And I couldn't bear to be held down or tied down to a place. Like, he just wanted to watch telly and I was like, I want to discover the world. I want to know what's out there. I want to live. Anyway, I then went to Cyprus and tried to start afresh. Ended up getting into another relationship with another guy for a year, Cypriot guy, and basically discovered that his family didn't want me. I wasn't good enough for them. I wasn't good enough for their son. And so he and I split up a year in. And he just don't know what to touch on and what to leave. But I had a very serious operation while I was with him to remove an ovary because I had a cyst on it. And so I was told that I couldn't get pregnant. I was told that you'd never be able to get pregnant. You'd have to have treatment. Anyway, I split up with this guy after a year. And then after we split up, I discovered I was pregnant. And then to just try and cut it shorter, I was pressured into having an abortion, which was really traumatic because I was so excited that I was pregnant. I'd been told I'd never be able to get pregnant, and I felt that this was like a new start, and I would just love this baby. Even though nobody else loved me, but I would love this baby. I would raise this baby. Everybody in my environment said, you're not able to raise a child. You don't have what you need. You don't have what it takes. Pretty much you're not good enough to be a mom. And I believed it. I fought against it for a few weeks, and then I gave up. It was like I surrendered. I waved my white flag, and I just went. When I think back, it was like a lamb to slaughter. Just completely surrendered to it. Like, okay. And so I went, and I had this termination, abortion, whatever we call it. And then I got into a relationship with the man who is now my husband. We've been together ever since, 23 years, something like that, who's Cypriot. And and then that started another whole series of events together where we had just tried to do life together. We'd run businesses together. We did lots of things. And then we left Cyprus after a business went wrong, and came to England. And in the last 17 years, I think it's been the last 17 years, it just has been a roller coaster of 8 further pregnancies, more miscarriages. Well, miscarriages, because termination wasn't a miscarriage. I've got 3 living children. I'd had one baby that was stillborn. We've run a business together. We have moved, I think it's something like 22 times. We've worked for people that used and abused us, trying to just make a living and send money home. And then bit by bit, chip, we managed to kind of get on our feet. And yeah, it's just been when people say a roller coaster, it has just been one thing after another, after another, after another. It felt like every time I caught my breath, something else would come, and then I'd catch my breath, and something else would come, and I'd catch. And it's like, there's something that says, I can get knocked down, but I get up again. And it's like that song is written for me. I might get knocked down, but I get up again. It's just been a thing I've done, not necessarily consciously, but I think there was just no other choice. I had to get up and keep going. And so I am here today. I'm 45 or 46. My kids keep reminding me, I can't remember. It's so unimportant to me that I never remember. I think I'm 46 years old now, 1974. And and I'm raising my children. I'm writing. I'm started my coaching business not long ago, and I'm doing life my way. Doing life my way. Finally, I'm doing life my way. That's pretty much kind of very, very bullet pointed storyline.
Yeah. As I was listening to all of that, and I'm thinking, what's the question I want to ask? And what's come up for me just towards the end there, and it's an odd question. I don't think I've ever asked a question like this before. Do you believe in bad luck?
Not anymore. I did for a long time. And also what had planted that seed in my head was when I was a little girl, they have this habit in Cyprus, they will drink coffee and then they turn it upside down, and the grounds of the coffee kind of start to trickle down the side of the cup. Then they'll turn it back up and they'll read your luck, they'll read your fortune. And when I was little, you'd go to somebody's house and they would drink the coffee and then they'd say, you turn it upside down and then I'll be able to tell you your fortune. And I remember doing that maybe 2-3 times in different people's houses, like if they were the moms of my friends, those kind of houses. And every single time, I kid you not, there would be an eye at the bottom of the cup, an eye, right?
Like seeing eye,
like
or letter.
that,
seeing eye.
like human eye. And they would say, see, that's the curse. That means there's the evil eye has been put up on your family. That's why everything keeps going wrong. And there's a curse being put on you. I mean, people in the village used to joke that we were like the poor version of the Kennedys. And of course, I didn't know who they were back then. So I'd be like, I don't even know what that means. Or the Onassis, that say you're the poor version of the Onassis family because they were Greek. And again, I had no idea what they were talking about. Just say, but it planted a seed. And then other things had happened. Like, for example, I remember one time I'd broken my arm. To get it plastered or fixed, because we had no hospital in the village. We had to go quite a long way. And when we arrived by the hospital off the bus, the bus we were on started moving, and it ran over an old lady. And I stood on the pavement with my grandfather and I just watched. I don't know how graphic I can be, but I watched this old lady get run over. I watched the wheels go over and all her insides fly across the road, almost in front of me. And so and then my grandfather didn't even explain. He just like took my hand. He's like, let's go. And we just, nothing, was no discussion, nothing. And then I don't know when it was, a year later, sometime later. Now my grandfather had a lot of connections with the local army. And I had become very close to a military guy, I don't know, officer's wife. And I was like, I looked upon her like a mom. I was very close to her. She would come and visit us. And I used to daydream that she was like my mom because she smelled good. And, and I would be like, I just loved being in her company. She had like manicured nails and was very beautiful. And I would just snuggle up to her and just feel like this sense like I'm with my mom. And then she was murdered. And one day, again, my grandfather came to pick me up from school. And he said, and he just gave me, I think he just gave me the newspaper. And it was on the front page, this woman had been brutally murdered by this man, assaulted and murdered. And he's like, oh, she's gone. And I thought, oh, how? But no explanation, no discussion. And so when people used to say, there's this evil eye on you, I believed it. And I think I carried that with me for a very, very long time. And then I, years later, when I started to explore faith and particularly Christianity, I started to learn that there is no such thing as luck or coincidences. And we used to say God incidences, I started to kind of believe more that, no, it's not like that. It doesn't work like that. I didn't make these things happen. I didn't bring these things on. These things just happened for a reason that I may not be able to understand right now, but maybe one day I will. Maybe I won't. But I was able to get to the point where it didn't matter. I didn't need to know why. When I lost my baby to stillbirth, I was always like, and this is something I was thinking about this today, actually, when, I was anticipating our chat. And I was going over my story in my head, not like how I was going to say it to you, but I was just reflecting on different things. And I was thinking about, I was like, isn't it interesting how I've never been involved in drugs or alcoholism? I've never had a vice. I've never had something that I would go to. I didn't self-harm. I just never got involved in anything like that. And I was asking in my head, why did I not? I had opportunities. I was offered it in school, plenty of opportunities. But there was something in me that would always say, no, because I can't control that. I don't know what it will happen. I don't know what will happen. And I'm not going to go down the route where I have no control over it. And there was always this unexplainable fervency for life, and which I can't put it into words. There was always like this most powerful instinct in me to survive. I will live. I will survive. There is a purpose in this. I have just got to get through this next one and this next one and this next one, because there is a purpose. I don't know what it is, but I know I have to live. And when I was all through my pregnancies, apart from the pregnancy that we talked about, the abortion, all through all my other pregnancies, I wouldn't even take paracetamol. I wouldn't drink a sip of coffee. I was so careful about everything that I put in my mouth had to be good for my baby, and I was just really stringent about those things. So when I lost the baby to stillbirth, I did ask why, how. I was so careful. Did I do something? Did I roll on my belly while I was sleeping? Did I have that bath water too hot? Did I do it? Was it I was very stressed all through my pregnancies. Did I cause it? What is it? And that was quite a difficult time because I really needed to know why. But what also fed it was that the stillbirth happened. It wasn't when I was in labor. The baby stopped moving before I was due. So I was about maybe, I think, 3 or 4 weeks before my due date. And I couldn't feel the baby moving. And I went to the hospital, and obviously that's where they confirmed the baby had died. And then I had to wait 3 days to go into hospital and be induced to deliver him. So, which we did. But then weeks later, when I was actually due to have my baby, I was in the garden. Now, what had happened was we were in the process of setting up a tea room. And my husband and I had worked so hard for so many years to find a way to start our own business so we could get ourselves back on our feet. So I had my oldest child, Mihalis, who was 2 years old. And I was pregnant, heavily pregnant with the baby that we ended up losing. And I'd been painting the shop all through the pregnancy, getting things ready. So when the baby was stillborn, my husband said to me, what do you want to do? And I said, I can't do this anymore. I just can't do this anymore. I want to go home. We have no one here. I just want to go home. And he said, that's fine. we were like 2 months away from opening the shop. Everything was almost ready. And he said, that's fine. Let's just leave it all. I'll pack our stuff. Let's go home. And then I thought about it and I said, well, we can't do that. We can't give up now. We can't stop now. We've come so far. What would we be going home to? More debts, problems. Like, we've got this far. We've got to push through. So we decided to stay and open the shop. And on the day I was actually due to have my baby, I was in the garden, in the back garden, because we had a flat upstairs and the shop was downstairs. And I was painting chairs. We'd been given free furniture from a friend who had renovated the fish and chip shop. And I was painting these chairs, this lovely vintage cream color for the shop, for the tea room. And I'm standing there in the sunshine thinking I should be in hospital holding my baby now. And I'm painting chairs, you know. And as I was doing that, my GP arrived, which is unheard of.
Yeah.
And I saw him walking down the path to our garden. And he had tears coming down his face. And he said, I just thought I'd check in on you. I was like, oh, okay. And he sat down and he looked at me and he went, I just don't understand. I don't understand. I have so many patients who are on drugs, who are alcoholic, who are eating all the junk, who've been beaten by their spouses or their partners, who've had everything, you know, they haven't done anything that you've done. And you are the one that loses the baby. He said, I just don't get it. As a doctor, it really challenges me. And it challenged me. I didn't want to show him because I wanted to comfort him. I could see he was really bothered by it, you know, and it really bothered me. But long time later, I got to a point where it didn't matter anymore, where I could let go and say, I don't need to know why. I don't need to understand. It's really not important anymore. It's not going to change anything. Even if they say, oh, we found out, we've discovered what causes that kind of stillbirth. It won't make any difference. It won't make, because what has to change is the way we deal with things, the way we view things, and having the sort of the sight, the lens by which we just have to trust and believe there is purpose, even if it doesn't make sense to our limited brain. You know, that's pretty much why I don't need to know why anymore.
Mhm.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that was a very long answer to your question.
No,
That was a great answer.
it was another story, wasn't it? But it stimulates an interesting idea. I was actually thinking about this. What was it even today? Actually, I was out for my my sort of state allowed one exercise per day, which we're in at the moment, and I just had this sort of philosophical thought just crossed my mind, and it wasn't even because I saw ants. It was based on ants, and I thought, how could ants in their little colony possibly grasp humanity, buildings, culture, behavior, relationships? There's just no way that you could possibly teach an ant anything about humanity. And then I thought, what if we are the ants of something else? So trying to teach humans about whatever is greater than humans, about the way that the universe works, about how purpose works, about the events of life. There's no way that we could possibly understand universal design, and you can put whatever labels and understanding you want to that term. No more than we could possibly teach the ants about humanity. And that's something that just kind of crossed my mind. And I started thinking about it again when you were going through your explanation of, you don't actually need to know why, because maybe if there is an answer, there's no possible way to comprehend the answer anyway.
Yeah, that's it, exactly. And it can also take you down paths that may not necessarily be good for you. You know, that kind of constant obsession with the why can end up really messing with your head. What would it achieve? Like, I don't know. You know, I mean, we all have such different perceptions of life and different ideas about how things happen, why things happen. But actually, ultimately, for me, it's just about what I do with the present, the now, and what I cultivate for the future. It's not just about the future, it's not just about the now, it's a little bit of both. So, what all the things that happened, you know, I am doing what I'm doing today or being who I am today because of all the things that happened. I mean, obviously, I can't know what I would have been like. And some of the things that I struggle with are due to the trauma, things that I can't control with my mind necessarily. So I have been diagnosed with a condition called fibromyalgia, which is a chronic pain condition. And for me, I think it stems from trauma, and it's very physical. So I noticed over the year, because I was like, when I was diagnosed, I was like, forget that. I'm not having that. I was 22. And it was shortly after the abortion, interestingly, when I was diagnosed, because that was a whole other story of depression and blame and guilt. And it was a few years of, you know, like I say, a whole other story, or we can touch on it if we have time. We don't have to, but so yeah, I think that I want to try and think of the words I want to use. If all that had not happened, who would I be today? And would I be a person that thinks the way I do? Would I be a spoiled brat? I don't know. Would I be a person that just folds up at the slightest thing? And maybe I wouldn't be. I don't know. What I find now is that, yeah, I was saying before about, and I'll just go back to the fibromyalgia thing, that when I was diagnosed, I rejected it. I just did not want to go down that route, but I thought, okay, I'm going to look into it. And I remember going to one of the meetings that this sort of different organizations do for people with specific conditions. And I went to this meeting, and there were people in wheelchairs and people with walking sticks and people very, very sick. And I remember standing, looking at everybody and thinking, I'm not having that. I did not go through all this shit to have this. Like, no way. And I'm not saying that these people that struggle in that way have, you know, in any way bring it onto themselves. I'm not saying that. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is there was some decision that took place in my head that said, no way. And so I walked out and never went to any meetings again. And then the doctor wanted to prescribe me medication, and I looked up the side effects, and again, it was like, no, I'm not going down that route either. And so I had such a determination to not let any diagnosis or any label determine my life or my way forward or the prognosis. But what I did find is that although I've been able to manage really well, there is one thing I haven't beaten yet, or I haven't found the solution yet, or the tool, and it's how my body expresses my emotions. And I'm still in that place, and that's still like part of my path, part of my journey, that my body will express how I feel or what I think. So I can be very headstrong in something. I can be very determined. I can be very mindful. I can be very positive. I'm definitely an optimist. But my body betrays me, and it's like, come on, I know there's a way around this. And it can be simple. It can be just like a disagreement, like a slight disagreement maybe with my husband, and boom, I'll be in pain. And I'm like, come on. we can beat this. We have to, So I understand that there are things I can't control. There are things that I don't have solutions or answers for, but I don't dwell there. I don't hang around in that place. I just keep going. And one day there'll probably be somebody that will say, I overcame that by doing this, and that's cool. But maybe my body's just so stuck in that place that it expresses things physically. That's fine too, but it doesn't hold me back, and it doesn't hold me down, and it doesn't determine my path. It just might slow me down sometimes, but that's also okay. Sometimes I need to slow down, so that's fine. Anyway, but again, I don't even know if I've answered your question. There's probably people listening going, oh my gosh, we'll stick to the point.
I'm just kind of getting absorbed in the stories, and I very much hope for the folks listening, they're getting absorbed in the stories, and to start pulling out some themes, I guess, from what you've been sharing with us so far today. It strikes me that you're someone who has constantly adapted to a new situation and a new environment. You're here and then you're there. You're doing this, you're doing that. That happens, you get told this. What insight do you have into adaptability and perhaps how you feel you've been able to adapt in these situations?
I would say it's because I look at opportunity. I think I look at every situation as an opportunity. I don't look at it as, oh my gosh, what's happening? But more than like, okay, this is what it is. What am I going to learn from this? What can I derive from this? What skills do I need to learn to deal with this? And that it's okay to be upset or fearful for a bit, but just not to stay in that place. So, when I was pregnant with my oldest living child, Mihalis, who's now 16, we had just gone through another very difficult time. We worked for somebody. Both my husband and I were working for this fish and chip shop, and we'd been promised that we could buy the business by working for the owner, and then bit by bit we would buy the business, we would rent the business from him, live in the house above the business that was also his, and because we had left debts in Cyprus, we were like, okay, this would be a way to pay our debts. So I'm pregnant with my oldest, and I had already had a very heavy bleed, so I thought I was going to miscarry him again as well. And when I didn't, he survived. But the whole deal with the shop fell through, and it was horrendous. It was the first time I'd seen my husband depressed, because he's also very positive. And he just became really, really low and really upset. And we ended up moving out of this house, because that was the owner's house, and into this tiny little place. And I'm like, my belly's growing and it's growing, and we have no solution, no income. In-laws are ringing from home needing money for the debts, and it was a horrendous situation. And then we get this opportunity where my husband's friend in Greece offered him a job in a hotel. So my husband says, let's go, let's start afresh. We'd already been in the UK 2 years. Let's go and start afresh. It'll be different there. It'll be like home. It'll be like Cyprus. And it's closer to Cyprus. My family can come visit us. We can go see family. It'll be cheaper to go back and forth and whatever. Let's do it. And I remember saying to him, are you sure? Because once we go, I can't fly back. I'm already 6 months pregnant. The airlines won't let me fly back. And he's like, no, I'm certain. So we go. With our same 3 suitcases that we arrived 2 years before in the UK, we leave again with nothing, and we go. And because the hotel wasn't going to be open for another month, we had to stay with a friend. We happened to have a friend in Athens, so we stayed with her for a month. And then we get the ferry when I'm 7 months pregnant. We get the ferry across to Crete, where this hotel job is. And we arrive to the hotel, and they show us the bedroom that we're supposed to live in. And I kid you not, it would probably be, I don't know what it's called, like not legal to have a human being living in it now. The electrics were faulty. There were wires hanging out of everywhere. There was one tiny little coil heater with all the wire thread, like threaded, where you could see the thing inside. It was freezing cold. It was March, and in Crete, it wasn't warm yet. There was the bath in the bathroom had rust all along the bottom, and when you turned the tap on, it was brown. There was no clean water. And this room they'd given us as staff was on the ceiling of the hotel. The bed, we had this like bed that I sat on it, and it was spring bed, and the springs touched the floor. Now I'm heavily pregnant by now, so my husband had to hoist me up to get me off the bed. And so I'm looking around this, and I'm thinking, well, this is it. We can't fly back. We have no money. We have no one to help us. We have to stay here. And I just remember that absolute desperation that just engulfed me, because I am now responsible for a life inside of me. It's not just me. And I walked out onto the roof, and I was thinking in my head, I'm not going to say to my husband, I asked you if you were sure, and you said yes. I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say it. But I remember walking onto the roof and looking down. And for that split second, the thought passed, shall I just jump? Shall I just do it? And it's like, that's it. It'll be just over in a moment. But just as that thought came in, the other thought, that fighting spirit came in. It was like, hell no. No. You're just going to have to get through this one too. You're just going to have to. I mean, it wasn't over in a moment. I sat on that roof and I let myself cry. And then I was like, okay, let's go. Let's do this as well. We've done everything else. We'll do this one too. I wasn't cheerful about it, but I was just like, okay, fine. We've got there's no option. I know I can't fly back. There's nowhere to go. I'm going to have to do this. And we did. I delivered my baby under those circumstances, and we survived, and we're here to tell the story. So yeah, the insight you ask about, it's because I've learned. I think every time I reflect, and I reflect a lot, and I reevaluate all the time. And every time I do that, I always derive the lessons. Every time. And you know what? I'm going to probably push some buttons now, but even in the abuse, even then, there were lessons to be learned. And so that's what I do. I reflect, I reevaluate it all, and I just kind of like, the lessons from it. And then it's like, okay, onwards. And I look at the opportunities. Like I don't tell people, because even in the situation we're in today, we're talking and we're in lockdown during this virus, and people are frightened, people are stressed out of their minds. And I still look for the opportunity. I still look at it as, okay, we'll have more time, we'll do this, I'll catch up with that, I can help my kids with this, we can think about what this means to us, we can realize that we've been too dependent on others for our well-being, and we can derive the lessons. So I think that tool of looking at it as an opportunity is what, maybe that's my insight, I'd say. Mm-hmm. Without thinking about it, that was just the first thing that came.
Yeah. There's a string that you've left dangling there, and I'm going to have to pull it, Michelle. You said there's lessons to learn even in the abuse. Are you willing to share what those lessons were?
Yeah. Oh. Well, I haven't really given it a lot of thought. So I'll probably walk away from this and go, "Ooh, there's also this I should have mentioned," but it's fine, you know. Who I would say, okay, let me just say first that for a long time, trust was an issue for me. And then I learned that not everybody's like that. And there was a long time where I overprotected my kids because I was so aware of how easy it is for someone to groom, manipulate, and abuse a child. Very easy. But then I had to stop myself and say, what am I achieving by overprotecting my kid? And I say the word overprotecting, to me, maybe it's over, you know, like, don't do this, don't go there, you might fall, this kind of thing. It turned out that no matter what you do, you can't stop bad things happening. Literally, no matter what you do, you can, maybe if you lock them up in the house, but then other bad things will happen, like they'll just go stay crazy or whatever. So the lesson derived mainly was that not all people are bad, and even I'd even go as far as saying, are people bad? Are they not born bad? It's like something causes that person to do that act that is bad. You know, I don't believe people are born rapists or killers or manipulators. Like, they're conditioned by something that's happened or triggered by something that's happened. So I had to go through a period of forgiving all my perpetrators, because it wasn't just one person. And I had to in order to forgive, I had to bring to mind everything that happened and like rewalk the journey, and then really be able to forgive rather than just say the words, you know. But for me, one of the things that helped me forgive was that, again, that coming back to, I don't know why that person could do that to a child, what makes them want to do that, or how they live with themselves when they've done that, what caused them to be able to do that. I don't know why, but I'm not going to carry that burden because it's not going to do me any good. And I'm not going to act from a place of fear for my kids, apart from obviously some reasonable things that you would put in place for your children. I'm not saying let them completely, you know, loose and don't. I'm just mean like within reason, because they've got to live their life too, and they've got to learn and they've got to grow. But that was one of, you know, those are some of the lessons derived even from a place of abuse, that having to understand what causes a person to be abusive, and to even have compassion. I'm just so aware that I'm probably pushing people's buttons here, but this is just my journey. I'm not in any way making light of it or saying that's what other people have to do. It took a long time for me to do that, and to feel that I received that lesson or that insight. And maybe it's a cop out for some people. They might say, you just say that because it makes it easier to live with it. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it is, but I know that's what's helped me. I know that's what's helped me deal with it, face it, move on from it. And also the fact that because I went through it, I understand more, and I'm more compassionate, I'm more sensitive, I'm more aware. I am super aware of how easy it is for children to be groomed and abused, and also for adults to be groomed and abused, because it happens to adults. It happened to me in my adulthood as well, and that was because I was so desperate to please. I was such a people pleaser that I would say yes to everything and everybody. One, because I didn't want to be in trouble. Two, I couldn't cope with the conflict. Three, because I wanted to just be a people pleaser. So I'd say yes, and that desperation to be loved and accepted and to please people would be, yes, use my body, even as an adult. Yeah, it's okay. I can give you that. Maybe, I don't have anything else to give. I never believed that I had anything here to give. So be like, okay, you can do that, and then that makes you happy. So that was something I had to also overcome. And but yeah, in terms of that, I don't know if that answers your question about the lessons derived from abuse. Learning to forgive, learning to let go of the why, learning to still cultivate compassion even if I don't feel like it, learning to choose, that I can choose whether I'm going to live as a victim all my life and in self-pity, or that I'm going to just get on with it because there's zillions of things that are happening to people all over the world, and we can't stay in that place. We have to move on. We have to keep going, but again, that's just my journey.
You mentioned trust, Michelle, and something that I wanted to swing back onto, and this is a really good opportunity to do so. If you don't mind me saying, you've had a string of shitty relationships in your life, and a lack of trust, poor attachment, validation, you name it, the psychologist would have a field day with this. Apart from your lucky husband. And I have to find out more into this because I don't feel this was a magic wand. You said earlier about someone else, knight in shining armor. I think there was some work that went on in this relationship. Would I be correct in that assumption?
Gosh, it'd be so spot on. Absolutely, absolutely spot on. Yeah, it has been definitely a work in progress. In some ways, it still is. I don't know whether you ever land anywhere in marriage or in a relationship and say, oh, yeah, we've got it now. We're sorted. I think it's an ongoing thing. But we started off as two very different people. And over the years, we've both changed a lot in order to get to where we are today. There's been at least 3 occasions that I can recollect now where we said, enough, we're going to divorce, enough. Or I said, I'm not doing this anymore. And each time he fought for a marriage, he fought for me. And maybe that also kind of started to validate that I was worth fighting for. And to sort of go, there are so many beautiful women out there. Like you could, when I met my husband, Andreas, when I first met him, he was working for a drinks company as a sales manager in the day and as a barman in the evening in the different nightclubs in Cyprus. He was very dapper, very handsome, really well dressed, very stylish, good dancer, kind of guy that most women would probably go after. And I had got this little part-time job working for a cafe, restaurant, bar thing place as a waitress. And it was his last night working as a barman, helping a friend that owned the premises. And it was my first night as a waitress. And we met. And I remember that evening of watching the women just like hanging off him, and swooning over him. And he was just like making their cocktails and mixing their drinks. So immediately I thought, well, I didn't actually think, I wasn't attracted to him at that point. But I remember thinking, blimey, he's very popular. And then I walked past him. I had to take the orders for the drinks and he would prepare them and I'd take my tray and go and give it to people. And so I gave my order, I gave him the order, and it was this place that was absolutely packed, heaving with people, and at that time people smoked inside, so smoking and cigar smoke and cigarette smoke and perspiration and loud music, and it was my life, you know. And people, it was like this, you know, I had to carry my tray like that to get past people. And he turned around in all this chaos and he went, "La dolce vita really suits you." I was like, "What?" In Greek. And he said, "La dolce vita, the perfume, it really suits you." I was like, "How can you even smell my perfume in this place?" And he went, "Oh, I can." And he was like, that was it. You know, I was like, whoa, that's amazing. Anyway, but we actually just then became friends. And we were friends for a year, because when I met him, I was already in this relationship with this other man. And so we couldn't do anything. And I didn't feel anything for him. I was just impressed, but I wasn't, because I was in a relationship with somebody. And so we were just really good friends, and we would have coffees together, and we'd all hang out together in one big group and do stuff like that. And over that time, I saw what a womanizer he was. You know, like he'd be 1 week with this woman, and he would come and tell me, be like, "Oh, last week it was with this Russian girl, and you know, because Cyprus is a tourist location, and then this week," and he'd pour out his heart with all his troubles, and I'd be giving him advice. And then one day I said to him, and I didn't know that he liked me back then, and I remember saying to him, "Do you know what? I could never, ever be with anybody like you, because I could never trust you. Like, you're too much of a womanizer. I could never trust you." And then months later, we were together as a couple. How does that happen? I mean, and you know what, though? The thing is also that's really important is, I should add that when I split up with this other guy and found out I was pregnant, one of my plans was to come back to the UK, because I thought, maybe I can raise this baby there. Maybe I need to just go to England, go back. Still had nobody here, but I thought, well, maybe somehow I'll make it work, you know. And he rang me. He didn't know anything. He just called me out of the blue one evening, and he said, "How you doing?" And I said, "Oh, I'm okay." I didn't tell him about the pregnancy. I said, "I'm just thinking about going back to the UK." And he said, "Oh, can I come over?" And I said, "Yeah, okay, come over." And he came over to the house with a bottle of wine. And he was planning to tell me about how much in love with me he was, and that he couldn't say anything while I was in another relationship. And then he said to me, "Oh, I brought some wine." And I said, "I can't drink it." And he went, "Why?" And I went, "Oh, God, just sit down." So then I told him, you know, and he just sat there in shock. And then I knew, I said to him, "Why are you so like upset?" And he said, "Well, I was planning to come and tell you how in love with you I am, and that I want, you know, well, as soon as you said to me, "Oh, I've split up with this guy and I'm on my own now and I'm going back to England," it was like, yes, my opportunity, I'm going with the wine. And then of course it just was, what? And he said to me that evening, as we talked about it, he said, because I said to him, I don't know what to do. Everybody's telling me to go and have an abortion. Even my gynecologist said I should have an abortion. And he said, if you decide to have an abortion, he said, if you decide to keep the baby, I'll still be your friend and I'll support you in whatever way I can. But if you decide to abort the baby, I can't be with you in a relationship because I don't want to raise another man's child, but I'll still be your friend. But if you abort it, then I would love for us to start afresh together, a new life, a new future, because I love you. But he said, you know, that's your decision to make. And eventually, I think it was some days later, I made the decision to have the abortion. And he drove me to the clinic. I think he paid for it. I can't really remember that clearly. I remember bits of it. But he drove me. I went in, I came out, I woke up in the hospital, and he was there. He dressed me. He took my hand. He led me out of the clinic into his car. He drove to my house where I was renting. He packed some of my things. He took my dog, my German Shepherd, put him in the car with my things. We drove back to his, and that was it. That was the beginning of our new relationship. So this is kind of, I say this to you because I want you to understand what foundation our relationship started on. What a broken, horrible, crumbling foundation. How do you start something new like that, you know? And of course, in all that time, I'm processing what I've just gone through. I'm processing the life I was responsible of terminating. And I'm, there's all this going on. And at the same time, I'm trying to have this relationship with this guy. And I don't know what I think, and I don't know who I am anymore. And that was like the starting point. And so over the years, there's been so many moments where we've gone, can we really do this? Because of that faulty foundation we started on. And there came a time when years later, in fact, it wasn't that long ago, it was only about 5 years ago, that I had discovered a friend who was doing this post-abortion recovery study, and she had offered to go through it with me. And it was I think a 12-week process, I can't remember, of each week we would meet and we would go through a chapter of this book with this kind of manual, and we would discuss everything, and we'd do some exercises, and I'd do journaling and stuff like that, and we would talk about it. And as I did that, one of the chapters was to write letters to the people that were responsible for leading me to have the abortion. And one of the letters was to the baby's father, one of them was to his parents, one of them was to the doctor, and one of them was to aunties and uncles in the village that had said I wasn't good enough to be a mom. And then one of them was to him. And I wrote him a letter. And when I went home, I said to him, by then we had all three of our kids, and I had a friend watch them, and I said, we need to drive somewhere. I need to tell you something. So we drove to a local beach, and we sat in the car, and I said, I want to read to you this letter. And in the letter, I told him that he had nothing to be ashamed of or to feel guilty about, and that it wasn't his burden to carry, because he had said to me before, a few times before, I wish I'd never said those words to you. Maybe if I hadn't said that to you, you would have kept that baby. And I would say, no. You were not responsible. Don't you take that from me. I was responsible. I made the decision. It doesn't matter why I made the decision. I made the decision. You do not get to take that burden. But he still wouldn't let it go, So that night I read him this letter, and I just explained about the years. I don't even remember what was in it, but I said in that letter that I forgave you years ago. I want you to know that I forgive you again, afresh, if you need that. I release you. I don't want you to carry this anymore. And he sat there just sobbing and sobbing and sobbing. This is a man who had never seen cry, had never, this is a man who was so proud, so Greek, and so kind of, I am the ego and the gorgeous guy that all women fought in. This man was sitting there crying and sobbing his heart out. And it was like, I still wish I didn't say it. And I said, but if we could go back and change things, how do we know how things would have turned out? We don't know. We have to let go. We don't know, and we just kind of held and cried together, and we grieved together. And it was an amazing moment. It was a beautiful moment. And there's been times when we've torn each other apart with words and horrible things. And there's been times when I've said enough, I want to walk away from this, I've had enough. And then there's been those moments where he'll fight for that marriage, and he'll be like, right, what am I not doing right? Or what is it I need to do? Or what is it that makes you feel like you can't be with me? And he will put himself in that place to work at it and work at it and work at it. And with each time I a layer comes off me, and I let go a bit more, and I trust a bit more, and then again and again. So it's been a journey. This is a man who, as I described him before to you, who was addicted to pornography, who, was what all the things we said before, keep repeating myself, and through over the years has overcome that addiction, has become the most dedicated, devoted family man. And it doesn't mean we don't have our difficult moments, because we still do sometimes, there's still, it's natural. But him hanging on in there and fighting for me has gained more trust. As I've seen that I'm valued he values me as I am, just for who I am. So I don't know if that answers your question again.
Yeah, I find it remarkable, actually, even as you just sort of summarized there, is that this was probably one of the men you would least trust in a romantic relationship, yet he's the one who you find yourself trusting the most now, and who has helped you with your trust in relationships. I find that fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. I'd like to bring us into the present day a little bit more, and talk about some of the work that you find yourself doing now. So you touched upon right at the start somewhere, talking about writing and coaching. And as I've listened to all of the stories that you've been sharing so far, it makes me wonder what your motivation is for this new project, and what is feeding what you're doing now. Can you elaborate a little bit more and help me out here?
Okay, so it's multifaceted, because I can't just do one thing. I am this unconventional person. Friends keep saying to me, you should call yourself the unconventional coach, because you never do anything the way anybody else does it. But so it is multifaceted. I am working on my memoir, and really struggling with it, because I find it so hard to know what to talk about and how much to talk about it. And so I am working on it, but I just really wanted to finish it soon, so I can say it's done. That's one of my projects. And yes, that's one of my projects. Now, another big thing that is very, very important to me is that I'm really passionate about alternative education. I am more than passionate about it. I have a fervency to see a reformation of our education system, like big time. If I could completely knock the whole thing down and rebuild it, I would rebuild it rather than reform it. But we'll stick with reform for now. As with the medical system, but anyway, education system is the main thing. Now, 8 years ago, I started homeschooling my kids, because my oldest child was being very severely bullied at school. He was in primary school. And up until that point, I was like the perfect, citizen. I did everything by the book. I obeyed the law. I was like such a good girl. I ran my business, as best as I could. And I did everything, I got him into this waiting list to get him into this lovely local school, and got him used to the school, and did all of those things. And then I found out that he was being bullied. And it was like unlike any of the stuff I've gone through, because this time it was my child. And that day because he'd been being bullied for a very, very, very long time. He was just 8 years old, and he wasn't saying, he was so frightened to tell. And he was hiding until his personality started to change. And I was like, there's something not right. And the school was telling me that everything was right, and he was such a lovely boy and such a good student, and nobody was giving me any information. And I dug, and then I got a call one day from a mom who said, I pushed my child, and he's told me that your child's been being bullied for a really long time. And it all came out. Anyway, I won't go into a lot of detail because it's a whole other story. But it put me on a very different way of looking at life. I suddenly stopped, and I remember going, what? I have gone through what I've gone through to have this child, to raise him to be polite and well-mannered and have integrity and all those things. And I trusted him. I trusted him into this school's hands. I trusted these people, because I almost lost Mihaly when he was being born. And so, like, I trusted them. And this is what happens. I trust them, and they kick me in the face by doing this to my child. They allowed this to happen because it turned out they knew, but they were just hiding it. And I was furious. I think more furious than I've been about anything I've ever gone through. In fact, I don't even know if I've ever been furious about the stuff I've gone through. But when it was my child, it was just like, let me out of the cage. And that fury forced me and my husband, again, bless him, to sit down and go, okay, what are we doing with our lives? We are working in this tea room. We were employing something like 22 people. It was a big operation. We're working really hard. We're paying ridiculous amounts of money for nurseries and childminders and after school care and all these things, so that we can give our best selves to customers who are not going to thank us in 10 years. They're not going to be like, oh, thank you for giving us your best service, your best product, your best energy, while my kids are being taken care of by strangers. And then by the time we get them home, we're exhausted, they're exhausted, and there's no time to connect, because then we've got homework to do. And then our family time is being robbed by a system who actually has no vested interest in them being unique, inventive, free human beings. The system's investing into little soldiers, little yes sir, no sir robots. Yeah, if we just prime them enough, we get what we need for our economy and our whatever. And it was such a wake-up call. It was a huge wake-up call. We sobbed our hearts out. We were like, how could we allow this to happen? How could we not see what was going on? How could we trust so much? But it forced us to look at our own lives, our own priorities, and we decided to sell the business. It was like, that's it. We just take him out, sell it. We stop now, and we rethink life. And I mean, it didn't happen overnight. It took quite a few months, and lots more things happened in those few months, but we did it. And I started homeschooling him. By then I had his younger brother, who was only 4 years old at the time, and then his younger sister, who was newborn. And she was just a little baby, and we started homeschooling. And then in those last 8 years, I've been on another journey of going from, I have no formal qualifications, I have no letters after my name, I have nothing to give you to say, Michelle's been here, done that, she's this qualified person, she's this expert, she's this da-da-da-da-da. I have none of those things, and I'm sitting there going, and I'm now taking responsibility for the education of my children. Like, I am not academic. I was a daydreamer. All I remember of school is staring out the window and daydreaming and writing. That's it. Nothing else. And so, and rescuing all the little baby birds and all the lizards, because I was absolutely obsessed with animals and saving animals. And I guess that's how my energy was kind of directed. So I spent the last 8 years so determined that I was going to do this, that I just read every book I could read on alternative education and all the different approaches of self-directed education and unschooling, world schooling, wild schooling, homeschooling. There's all these different approaches. I read them all. I even did a course in how to start an alternative school. And we just tried and tested different things to find what worked. And in those 8 years, I learned that the more I let go of my expectations, my beliefs, my ideals, the more my children thrived. And I loved watching this happen. And I'm still sometimes tested on this. Like there's been times my middle son has sensory issues. So he has to feel everything. And so he'll eat with his hands. And he's 12 now, but he often will use his hands to eat. And there'd been times in the past when I'd go, honey, use your cutlery. And then he'd try, and I'd see him trying. And then he didn't, if I wasn't looking, he'd use his hands. And then I thought one day, and of course, I talk to experts, and they're like, oh, he must learn to use fine motor skills because, he'll never be able to do things in his life if he doesn't train his hands to do fine motor skills, and blah, 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 blah. And I got to a point where I was like, oh, forget this. Of course, he'll be able to do stuff when he's older. If he really wants to learn to use fine motor skills, he will learn to use them. We are capable of so much more than we ever could realize. And yet the system tells us by such and such age, you must have all these things honed and have all this knowledge so that you can be a success, in inverted commas, success. I threw the rule book out of the window, and I just thought, no, we're going to do life our way. We're not going to follow any curriculum. We're not going to follow anybody's system. We're going to be intuitive in how we parent and how we educate. And so the more we've done that, the more I've seen my kids embrace opportunities, develop positive mindsets, develop a growth mindset, critical thinking, all the things that schools don't teach you, and their personalities, their characters, their compassionate natures, their analytical skills, all these different things. I mean, I'm humbled by it. Because I don't teach those things. I'm not teaching them. I'm just facilitating. I am allowing the space for them to grow according to what's already there, their gifts, their talents, their passions, their interests. And then we weave in learning just by doing life. And so that has been an amazing journey for us. And I have had to learn to just kind of go, all the voices, you're going to leave them uneducated. What about this? What about? And to go, yeah, okay, it's fine. Like you just give your own opinions. Thank you. But none of those have served us all this time. And so thank you, but no, thank you. And just to do, that's taken a lot of courage, I think, because even now I have to catch myself when my daughter says, I know she'll dress herself to go out somewhere. She's 8. And then my husband will go, well, you've got a hole in your leggings. And she'll be, yeah, no, I like it. And he'll go, no, you can't go out with a hole in your leggings. So now I'll say, why can't she? Go, well, what will people think? Yeah, what will people think? That we don't buy her clothes? Let them think that. They're not going to clothe her. If she loves her leggings with a hole in them, let her go out with a hole in her leggings. I'm not going to dress my child to please what people think when we go out. They think it makes me a terrible parent, so be it. They don't see what's behind the scenes, and we spend so much energy and time on stupid details, that are about our own preconceptions, our own beliefs, our own fears. We miss the whole thing in our children, and there's so much amazing stuff to discover in them and to witness. They teach me stuff all the time. I can't teach them anywhere near what they teach me. And so to come back to your question, I haven't forgotten. It's just like
you're amazing at remembering questions when you're telling a story.
Yeah, I'm just very long-winded. Yeah, and so that has been what drives me to do what I'm doing now. The coaching is my way of using my skills and my experiences to make a difference to others, to come alongside and say, I've walked a lot of the journey and I can help, basically. But the writing is my way of reaching people and to sort of introduce these concepts to them, to say, just take your eyes off where you're at right now and just consider this other possibility. Just consider what can happen when you become non-conformist. What can happen when you step out of that box? What's the possibilities? So one of the books I'm working on, because I can't work on one book at a time, is is one that I don't know if I've coined the term, by the way. So I've called it life schooling, because the nearest thing I can describe how we do education is called life schooling. We do education through life, through living life, living it fully, learning from each other, experiencing things, and just learning all the skills we need. I guess how I've done life, how I'm where I am today, and so I've called it life schooling. So I'm writing a book that explains those concepts that we've used over the last 8 years. That's one of my books. I'm also working on a journal that actually I just started that this week, and I'm already halfway through, because of the situation, because parents have been getting in touch and saying, how do I help my child handle the challenge of the COVID-19? How do we do this? How do we do that? So I started creating a journal for children. The idea being that if you know of a child that's going through a challenging time, then you may buy that as a gift for them, and they would find a trusted person, a parent, a grandparent, a foster carer, a trusted friend or trusted adult or a mentor who might help them chisel through this journal to actually really unpack what's going on and understand how they can reframe what's happening and derive the lessons from it. So it's a bit, again, like taking my own life's experiences and putting them into how would I want to pass that on to a child in a form of a journal, so they're part of the process. So I'm doing that too. I've also finished a children's book, which I hope it was supposed to be out late spring, but with everything that's happened, we might have to delay it by a few months. And it's a fiction story where I have weaved in the true story of our rescue dog, Poppy. We have a little rescue dog that we rescued from Greece and brought back to England 4 years ago. And I wanted her story to be inspiring, because if I tell you everything went wrong and everything looked like we could not bring this dog back to England, literally it was a series of miracles took place for this dog to make it back. And it was at the point where my middle child, my now 12-year-old Vangelis, had said at the time, he said, Mummy, if you can't get Poppy to England, I'm not coming back with you. I'm going to stay here with her, and we're going to be homeless together, and we'll be fine. We'll survive. We've watched Bear Grylls. We know what to do. And you're okay. You can go back. It's okay. And I was like, okay, I've got to try and get this dog back to England. So there was a whole series of events that took place. And it was just miracle after miracle after miracle. And I really felt that I couldn't just let this story go. I had to make it available to other children to get that hope that even when things seem impossible, miracles can happen. And anyways, I finished that. It's with the editor at the moment. Illustrations are done. And so, and I'm self-publishing it because nobody wanted to publish it. I did send it and nobody wanted to pick it up. So it wasn't diverse enough, apparently. There wasn't, politically correct enough and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's okay, so be it. But yeah, so that's it. I'm working on all those different writing projects. My heart is really definitely to change the way our education system works. It pains me to see what we're doing to children. It pains me, it grieves me. I just think, oh boy, if we could see what's possible when we take our hands off and step back, we would be amazed. There's a whole other way of doing it. And we're not doing it because either we're frightened or we trust the system too much. And it's tragic, really tragic. But that's definitely one of my visions for the future. is to just do something about it in my own little way, however way I can, you know? Yeah, that's where I'm at. That's kind of things as they are now.
It's funny, this, if we'd done this interview another time, would have probably been quite a niche discussion for the handful of parents out there who homeschool their pupils. And actually,
Yeah.
now this has become a very relevant mainstream
Yeah.
discussion. It's funny the way these things work. I would like to bring some COVID context into our discussion now and talk a little bit about the current situation, and perhaps a few more of these things will pop up.
Okay.
My first question in this regard is, how has the whole coronavirus situation been affecting you and your household?
Not badly at all. Yeah, I'm almost embarrassed to say that, because on my Facebook I've been told that I'm almost too positive about it all. It's a very
I've had that as
difficult.
well. It's okay.
Have you? And so it's like, oh, you don't know what to say, but that's how I see it. I've seen it, you know, like, well, we've talked about it all, and then so to me this is just another one of those adversities that comes along, and we face it in the same way. Okay, ironically, it hasn't affected us that much because of the way we've lived so far, because of not trying to tick anybody's boxes. We've tended to already have created a home into a retreat. Like, our home is filled with resources. I have a whole room that's like a library. I'm still buying books all the time. You know, we borrow books, we read books, we listen to them. We watch stuff. The children's bedrooms are kind of their own little retreats where they have privacy and the way they want things to be. We have, like, we are unconventional as parents. I don't know how else to describe it. We don't have bedtimes. We don't impose bedtimes. We don't impose meal times. We don't impose any of that. And so the children have learned to regulate themselves a very, very long time ago. They know when to eat when they're hungry, how to prepare snacks. They understand to not just, because we talk about our nutrition and our health, not to just gorge. They know now is even more important to look after their immunity by eating healthier, and they are. You know, they're helping themselves to fruit more. They're eating consciously, let's say. But I think not having those imposed routines has really helped us, because there's nothing that's had to change. I go to bed before they do usually, and they'll just go to bed when they're ready, and they'll get up when they're ready, and we'll do our things that we need to do. We'll connect together different parts of the day. I make sure I check in with them regularly to, you know, whether it's I make a cup of tea and go into my oldest son's room and watch him gaming, or we'll have a chat, or he'll play me his latest song, or he'll show me his vocal ability that he's been practicing since the lockdown. And so we don't impose limits on screens, we don't impose limits on bedtimes, we don't impose limits on meals. And actually that's what's really helped, because we just have been doing what we've always been doing. The only difference is we can't go out to meet with friends or have them over for play dates. And we can't do the activities we normally do, like my daughter does ballet and horse riding. The boys do youth groups and swimming clubs and whatever. And so those, you know, that's the only difference, is just that's been taken away. But what they've done is they've just gone, oh cool, well I can just do that more then. And they haven't really been that affected. We talk about it. I make sure I check in and I say, you know, does this situation concern you? Is something we can talk about? We have talked about it. For my daughter, probably she's really, really missing her best friend, who's also homeschooled. So they would see each other for she would come over to mine for like 7 hours or 8 hours for the day, and I'd feed them here, and then she would go to hers and spend the whole day. And so she's missing that. She misses her friend. But aside from that, I work from home anyway. I love writing and reading, so I'm an introvert by nature. So this hasn't affected me personally at all, because I love my own company. We're all very cool with each other's company. We all understand each other's limitations. This is something else, we love others' needs and respect them. So if somebody says, I'm going to my room now, that's code for I need to be alone.
Yeah.
And I won't call him down for mealtime. I'll shout out or I'll message them and go, dinner's ready, it's on the hob, help yourself when you want to. And sometimes they'll fill a plate and come and sit with us. Sometimes they won't. That's cool. It hasn't affected our connections, our relationships. In fact, we've grown closer and stronger because there's this mutual respect we're always cultivating. So we're cool with it. We're riding it out. We understand the importance of staying in. And so far that's kind of where we're at. I'm sorry. And I'm using the time to do loads of writing. So not driving anybody anywhere.
Yeah, me too. Do you have any insights or suggestions for people that will help them get through this period that we find ourselves in?
Let go. Just let go of your expectations of yourself, your expectations of your kids, your expectations of your spouses. Everybody's going to struggle in different ways, and sometimes it might be that they'll go particularly quiet or veg in front of the television. It's not a bad thing. We're in a season where we have to do what it takes to survive. So this is not the time to be, you've been on the TV longer than 2 hours, you're going to go blind. They're not going to go blind, or you've been gaming for how many hours and blah, 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 because that's also, I've come across, which is how we let go of the limits on screens, research that actually disproves a lot of the research that talks about them being harmful. So, a lot of the research we read, a lot of the stuff we read is very one-sided. We get one perspective and then we don't get everything else. So we get, oh, it's bad for you because those kids that are isolating in their rooms for hours and then gaming. Well, no, that's actually, it's not the gaming that's been bad. It's the fact that they're isolating in their rooms. So you need to address that, not the screens. So check in with your kid in a different way. Create time to connect with them in a different way. And actually, you'll find that you're filling their vessel in a different way, and they're okay, because that's what keeps them going right now. That's what they need. They need to disengage from what's going on around them and engage into something that takes their mind off. So I would say, for me personally, I'd say let go of all the things that are causing conflict or aggravation or irritability. This isn't necessarily, I know people are saying, oh, this is the time to all share meals at a table. It might not be. I don't want to do that right now. I don't want to sit at a table with the rest of my family and have a meal because I've got things going on in my head. And that we have had days where we've all sat together, but most days I'm making the meal and I'm going, are you hungry? They're like, no, I don't want anything yet. Fine, no problem, eat when you're ready. So just to let go would probably be the main thing for coping with the situation. And another thing I would say is ask yourself, the question is, what opportunities are presented to me through this? I don't watch the news. I don't read all the social media that's going on about it. I ask my husband, I go every day because he'll check the news. I go, is there anything I need to know? And he'll go, no. Fine, awesome. That's it. I'm good. Because I know it affects me and I don't need it. I'm in the house. I'm not doing anything. I do once a week. I've been doing once a week the shopping for all the meals. And other than that, I don't need to know. When I arrived at the supermarket, they told me how to do my shopping to be safe. I did it. I got home and so I don't need a blow-by-blow account of every death, every case, every possibility of everything that feeds fear. So if it feeds fear, stay away from it. Do you need to know? Do you need to have a blow-by-blow account? What will it change in your family? What can you let go of? What opportunities do you see in this situation? And what are you learning about yourself and your family? And that could be, it could be like in our case, my husband, his work is very physical. He's a coffee barista trainer. And so he visits his clients and is training them on the coffee machines. And he's always on the go. And so for him, this is difficult. It's difficult to just be at home and not be on the go, on the move all the time. So I'm learning that he's struggling with this, like more than any of us are, because see, we are always, this is our normal. He's out at work. And so I'm learning about his limitations, his needs, his mental health. And I'm learning to step back and not ask questions that might aggravate him or pressurize him. He needs the space to just process now. This isn't the time to solve issues or problems or add my fears onto him or my concerns, and he's not doing it for me either, to me. So yeah, that's kind of what I would say. In terms of the kids, there's something I think I should say. You can't do anything wrong here. No matter what you do or what you don't do, if you were to not do a single thing to do with schooling, I'm going to get clobbered by all the teachers now. They will not suffer for it. And I've got friends who are teachers, so oh my gosh. But yeah, if you were to do nothing with them that is seen as formal schooling, they will not suffer for it. It will probably help recharge their brain, because taking this rest period from all the pressures they've had and the stress of schooling and exams and revisions and blah, 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 it might just actually help reset them. And it'll help them discover who they are and how they tick. And those are good things. We as parents, you probably need to do more time having conversations with them about anything and everything than trying to get them to do schoolwork. I have always had, and actually this was the thing that helped me, because people always ask me two questions when they find out I homeschool, which isn't necessarily homeschooling, but anyway, they always say, how do you socialize your kids, as if it's something you have to arrange? And what about exams? What about their exams? What are you going to do about that if you're not following curriculum, right? So my answer to the exams thing, which I know is the most important thing right now, is they can study anytime. I actually put my oldest off from doing GCSEs because I was like, honey, live your life, have fun, play, enjoy your childhood, do the things you love, forget about GCSEs. You can do them in evening class. You can start working, start to find your way, start to find what you love doing, what you hate doing, and then you'll soon find the things that you're really passionate about. And then if you need GCSEs or A-levels, you can enroll in evening class college or online college or open university, and you can do what it takes to get into the course you want to get into. As it was, he did the GCSEs anyway because he wanted to get them out of the way. But that was his choice. It was not from me. He just said, I need to do the ones I need to do for my course, because he's now in college doing engineering and motor vehicle. So he needed to have some GCSEs for that. So he did them. But not because of me pushing him into them. And he only did the ones he needed to get into this particular course. Now he's thinking about possibly doing university. And he said, well, I'll just do a foundation year to get into the degree if I need to do it. So I'm 45 or 46. Remember, I can't remember. I still can't remember. And I started in September doing a counseling course at 46. You can do these things anytime in life. You don't have to have it all done by 16 or 18, just so you can get into this place and that place and the other place. Because actually, how many of us are doing the jobs we studied to do when we were in our teens? How many of us are using those qualifications? How many of us diverted and retrained and are retraining? And actually, that's the message I want to give my kids is nothing is forever. Don't panic. You change your mind, cool. That's another experience you would have had. That's awesome. Go on and do something else. learning is fantastic when you enjoy it. So keep going. And so now I would say my personal advice or suggestion would be forget about all that. You know, unless it's crucially important. And I know for some parents, like structure, that's fine. If that's how you guys take, that's fine. You know, do it. But from my perspective, what I find helpful is take the pressure off, the expectations, just have fun, reconnect, do stuff that makes you laugh loads, get those comedies on, because when you laugh, you release endorphins, your body feels better, your mind feels better, the kids feel better. You know, do those things. Those are much more important right now than anything else that can wait. What can wait, put on hold, put it on the shelf. You know, that's what I would say.
You used the words opportunities earlier. Do you see any opportunities in this current situation?
Oh yeah, absolutely, tons. Whoa. I see opportunities to learn how to look after our bodies more. I know I posted something recently about taking care of our bodies and boosting our own immunity. And I still stand by it, even though there were people that disagreed and said, you know, this virus is no respecter of persons, blah, 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 blah. I personally don't agree with that. I think that our body is our best weapon against anything. The healthier we are, the stronger our immunity, the more chance we have to fight whatever comes our way. And so I see this as an opportunity to understand the importance of looking after our health more, of being mindful about what we put in our mouths. And perhaps people will start to understand how reliant we have been on different systems to keep us alive, whether it's the medical system, whether it's supermarkets. You know, we're seeing empty shelves and fighting over toilet paper, for goodness sake, you know. And I'm like, I said to my kids, because when my kids were like, Mommy, do we have any? And I'm like, honey, think tribes in Africa. What do they use? We'll be fine. And they were like, oh yeah, that's cool. Okay, that took care of that worry, you know. But yeah, so I think one of the things that I have seen was just realizing how reliant and dependable we are on world systems to function. It started to make me think more about self-sustainability. How do we grow our own stuff more? How do we look at more natural resources for our health, whether it's herbs or essential oils or whatever? We're thinking about that more, and we're studying about that more. There has been a whole thing going around about the 5G effect on our health. So I've been researching natural ways to help combat whatever effect from that could be in the home. And I found a whole list of plants which absorb radioactivity from phones, Wi-Fi routers, and all that. So guess what I'll be shopping when this is over? You know, and so that was something that we've learned that we didn't need to know before. It never came up before. It came up now. Opportunity. We're going to buy plants, and apparently they detox the air as well. So we're going to actually produce more healthy air in our house. Opportunities to adapt businesses. You know, we've been so reliant on that sort of in-person businesses. Everybody's looking at ways to go online or to personalize their businesses more. There's so much opportunity to think about, this isn't doing what it was doing before. How else can I do it? How else can I, or what else can I use? Which skills do I need to learn to achieve this? We have online platforms. We could be sitting at home learning now before everything opens up again and we're on that treadmill again, right? And I think there'll be people going soon, there'll be people saying, God, I wish I did that while I was in lockdown. I wish I knew, and I'd spend time learning marketing more, learning how to use social media more, learning how to write good copy more, or whatever it is that your business might need to become successful. opportunities to cultivate relationships. I am a messaging person. I'm terrible at having conversations. You wouldn't think it by how much I can talk, right? I can talk. So, but I actually hate talking on the phone. I like personal contact. I love to take somebody out for a coffee and have conversations. And so that's okay, babies. My daughter just came in to check something on the mirror. You can come say hi. You can come say hi, David. So this is my daughter. Say hi.
Hello,
David.
this is our first child cameo on the podcast.
Hey, see, unconventional. There you go. So yeah, I see those. Oh, the doors open, as you will probably hear. My oldest was gaming with his mates online, not in person. Oh gosh, the dog's even gone in on it now. Come on. So sorry. Yeah,
pause.
This is so. She's like so nosy.
There we go. Child
the
cameo
dog
and a dog cameo.
Yeah, hi Bobby. You'll remember this interview, David, for more reasons than you think. So yeah, definitely opportunities for business. Yeah, I was saying like connections and conversations. I love to have time with people, having a coffee together, a meal together, and allowing that space and the time to talk. But we can't do that now. So, you know, whereas people before I text people and just checking in on you, checking how you are, I've been thinking about you. Now I'm more likely to do a Zoom call and spend an hour or 2 hours talking, unpacking stuff that's been going on for a while, cheering them on, encouraging them. They encourage me, have a good laugh, and then you get off the phone or the Zoom call or whatever, and you feel better and they feel better, and you've reconnected at a level we haven't been doing for a really long time. You know, I think I have like 300 friends on Facebook, and they're all people I know, but I don't have time to talk to all those 300 people. Well, now I do. Okay, now I do. Now I have opportunity to reconnect with people I haven't spoken to in a long time, and to cultivate those relationships, and even to filter the ones that aren't serving me any longer, because there are those that you kind of go, that one's kind of flitted out now, and it's served its season, and it's no more. So that's an opportunity. That's a phenomenal opportunity to pick up old projects, to finish things you started and never finished because of lack of time, and to learn new things. I mean, that's so much opportunity, I think, in what's happening right now, to create your home into a retreat, to reevaluate your life. You've got time to really, I go on my little daily walk that I'm allowed, and that's my time to process my thoughts, and sometimes just to reevaluate what we've been doing. How would I like to do them differently? What would I want to change when all this is over? Do I really want to go back to the way things were? What will I want to change? How am I going to change it? This is the time to think about all that. I think a lot of people have been so afraid of the death toll and the risk. I come in and I say, the reason we're so afraid of it is because we're getting this blow-by-blow account every flipping minute of the day. It's on everywhere. Every website I've gone on recently, unrelated completely, and boom, on the top, COVID-19 information. I don't want the COVID-19 information. Go away. I have enough of it coming through every flipping avenue right now. I know what I need to know. It's okay. But it's there, and what is it doing? Does it have a purpose? I mean, okay, we know what we need to know. We get our little check-in maybe every day, and then we need to get on with our day. And so my thinking is that if we were to have this blow-by-blow account, forget the COVID-19 thing right now. Let's just say this isn't happening. Put it to the side. In our normal day-to-day life, as it was before a few weeks ago, or months ago for some people, if we were receiving this blow-by-blow account about every car accident, every death, every fatality, every sickness, every cancer death, AIDS death, diabetes death, that happened around the world, or even in the United Kingdom, if we had that, a constant meter clicking, this happened, this happened, this happened, we would be feeling as we are now. We would be so aware of our mortality and how possible, actually, how easy it is to get in our car and have an accident, that we would be living our lives very differently. But we don't get that. We don't live by that blow by blow account, but it's all happening. It's not happening. If we had a count every person that died in the floods, in the tsunamis, in the starvation, malnutrition, drought, all those different earthquakes, if we were having that constant information, we would be in where we are now. The reason we're feeling like we are feeling now is because we have this constant, unrelenting source of information feeding the fear. So to me, as long as we're being sensible and we're following all the precautions, we need to get on with our lives. And we need to evaluate and understand that risk is everywhere all the time. All the time. I am probably more aware of it than others, having experienced so much death and so suddenly. But it's true and it's real. And I don't know from one minute to the next what's going to happen. And I'm not afraid of the COVID-19 as much as I am of the accident, of a heart attack, of an allergic reaction, of slipping in the bath and hitting my head, or, anything like that. And those things happen all the time. We're not hearing about them now because for obvious reasons, but they're happening all the time. And so I think it's like we just have to kind of grasp that, pause, and understand what it is. Hi, sweetie. The other one's checking in on me. So yeah, that's kind of the way I'm thinking about things. That's the way I'm addressing this. And I think any testing time where we are, I've had friends say to me, I think I'm going insane, or this is really getting to me. I would say, okay, don't push it away. Just sit with it and question it. Why am I feeling like this? What's causing this? What's triggering? What's undergirding it? Is it fear? Is it fear of death? Is it fear of losing a loved one? Unpack it and then kind of make peace with it. Make peace with it, because that's what's going to accompany you for the rest of your life. Because those risks are there all the time.
Michelle, I'd normally have a couple of questions that I would use to round things off, but I feel that we've had such a deep discussion today that I actually don't think the audience could take anything.
Could handle it.
And because this has actually been such a free-flowing, I say discussion, I've done very little of it. I've just kind of given you the floor and let you go. Because I feel this has been so free-flowing, I actually don't want to bring anything scripted into it now. Mm-hmm. So what I'm going to end on instead is actually usually what my last kind of statement is, that for anyone who's been listening today and they've resonated with any of the many aspects of your story that they could have resonated with, they're interested in your writing, your coaching, your homeschooling, where would you be directing people to go to find out more about who you are and what you do?
Okay, at the moment, probably Facebook would be the easiest if they're on there. I have a page called Michelle Foulia. Sorry, I have a really unusual surname. Foulia, Foulia. Michelle Foulia Coaching is my Facebook page for coaching, where you can message me. I also have my personal page, which is Michelle Foulia, and they'll find me on that as well. They can message me through that. My website, I have a website in the making, which is michellefoulia.com, but it's not ready yet. I haven't really felt that was such a priority, so I haven't kind of pursued that so much. And I write a blog as well called Oceans Apart blog. There's quite a few oceans apart, so you might struggle finding me actually. But anyway, I do have a blog as well. yeah, that's probably the best places to find me. And if they really can't find me and they really want to find me, they can contact you and you can pass on a message.
Well, Michelle, I'd just like to thank you for our interview today. I have really admired your persistence. I just can't think of any other word that could begin to describe and sum up your story. And I think that one is the closest word. So I'd just like to thank you and acknowledge you for bringing that and so much more into our conversation today.
Oh, thank you. I want to thank you for your time. I know we've spoken a long time. It'd be a miracle if anybody listens to this to the end. But if they do, I want to thank them from the bottom of my heart. I really appreciate it. And I really appreciate you giving me this time as well, David. Thank you.
To continue to help you through this isolation period, I've decided to open up my Author Your Life Academy for free for the next 3 months. Author Your Life is my online educational community where you can access training sessions, workshops, and question and answers and connect with other people around the world who are going through this situation and trying to make the best of things. The Academy normally costs $27 a month to subscribe, but for the next 3 months, I'm going to open that up for free. Essentially, you're getting a 3-month free trial of the platform. To access the Author Your Life Academy, go to authoryourlife.org/academy, and when prompted, enter the code CORONA in block capitals. Yes, what else would the code be? CORONA in block capitals, and that will take your $27 subscription down to zero for the next 3 months. The Academy is where I'm going to be focusing a lot of my content during this difficult time. It's where I'm trying to bring people together to help and support each other as we go through this period of isolation, of fear, of uncertainty. I hope the Academy is something that will be able to help you too during this situation. So if you want to come in and join us, as I said, go to authoryourlife.org/academy, and when you sign up, enter the code CORONA, and that will give you 3 months for free. It's my gift to you to try and help and support during this time as best I can. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd appreciate it hugely if you could head over to iTunes and leave a rating and review for the podcast. With your review, please be as honest and detailed as you can be, because with honest and detailed feedback, that helps me to adapt and grow this podcast to most serve you, the listener. Also, if you enjoyed this episode, then make sure you subscribe to the podcast. That way you aren't going to miss any of the future episodes that we've got lined up for you. Until next time, remember that you are the author of your life. You hold the pen, and you can write whatever script you want for yourself. So go out today and write yourself a beautiful story.